The work that I do explores how things move from the material world to the digital world and then come back out into the material world in a sort of, I don't know, what you might think of as a sort of performative, representational terrain or landscape, right? I do some 3D printing, but I also work with some sort of microelectronics platforms, mostly with things like capacitive touch, sensors, and that sort of stuff that can be used in the service of interactive, not really screen-based interfaces, but interactive, tangible objects. That's a tricky one. I would say it's a mode of material and conceptual um, engagement. Let's say this is a long, ongoing thing about what's the best definition of critical making.
What the hell are we doing?
What the hell are we doing? So one of the biggest sort of core distinctions between, say, critical making and a lot of the other branches of making or ways of making is that I think most people who would identify as critical makers are not as interested in the sort of terminal object, right? In producing something that is, monetizable or part of, or can be like integrated into a system. It's more the process of making something should be an opportunity for a kind of reflexive process or reflexive engagement for the people taking part of it. Reflexive and discursive engagement. It's a very interdisciplinary space. We have these open lab hours on Friday morning, and anytime you come into an open lab hour, you might encounter, someone like Dan who's studying shifting modes of production or the shifting landscape of production as a result of things like 3D printers and what 3D printers mean in a kind of new political economy of production or DIY production. Josh is a research associate. He's started a lab at Toronto General, basically 3D printing surgical training models. You have Mike over here. Mike is an expert in residence and a long-term industrial designer. And really our go-to when we can't figure out how to make something look nice or work nice. And we're just content with some stupid MacGyver solution where we take some gum and, paperclip and some other, whatever garbage we have kicking around. Mike's the one who will say, no, that's going to fail, or this is a bad idea and you should use, let's actually design something right. And so as far as research goes, a few of us are PhD students. We have a few affiliates like Mike and Josh and Azim, who's out there, who's doing some orthotics work. Again, starting with 3D scanning and then building sort of custom orthotics stuff. This was probably one of the first critical making projects that I did. So this thing is called the Emometer. What is it? It's sort of an affective capture system that so here's how it worked. Before I was a master's student, when I was still just kind of like coming around and hanging around the lab here, myself and I think maybe 3 or 4 master's students from the critical making lab at the time, we built this thing. It was connected to a conference that Matt was organizing with Megan Bowler from OISE, and the conference was called DIY Citizenship, and we thought, what's an interesting way of engaging with the conference participants? And we were making them badges anyway on this laser engraver that we have over there. So we laser cut all these badges for everyone who was coming to the conference, and on it, you can see they have these little sliders that each one represents a different kind of mood that they might feel that day. So it's a sort of analog, affective data system, right? And they'd be wearing this, and at different points of the day, they might look down and say, oh, okay, today I feel pretty connected. Or, we were trying to think, like, what are some moods or experiences that they might want to convey. So they'd go, okay, today I feel a little connected, today I feel inspired. Okay, I'm going to crank that one way up. And then we set up a few of these Emometer boxes. These were the kind of input stations around the thing. And you would go up and you'd look at your badge and say, okay, right now I'm feeling connected is low, inspired is high, engaged is wherever. Okay? And then Now you're pushing the data up to the system. If I remember, we were using something called Patchabay to aggregate all the data that people were pushing up, and then we had a live in-time visualization that was aggregating and visualizing everyone's sort of mood, the conference mood, right? You know, and all it was a simple, the Arduino's probably ripped out of here at this point. Yeah, it's been repurposed somewhere. These are some old cabinet hinges that I found around my house. There's a part of an old skateboard deck, some crappy pine, some really garbagey old particle board, and you know, it was just like a mishmash of different things, and then some sliders, right? And over the course of a 2-day conference, people would walk up to these stations, fill this stuff in, hit it, and then go. And that was the first project that I kind of worked on, and really the first data project that I worked on through the Critical Making Lab. This wasn't like big data by any means, but it was thinking about what it means to aggregate data and thinking about what it means to capture the sort of data that resists capture. So, you know, what, like affective data, for example, that's not biometric or not clear biometric data, right? It's not your heart rate, it's not your, you know, galvanic skin response or something like that. This is, oh, I feel engaged or I feel inspired. So it's a more qualitative kind of affective data. Not that long after, you know, I worked on a number of different things. We built a multi-touch table out of some old PlayStation cameras, and we actually played digital air hockey on it, which was a lot of fun. That got me really interested in multi-touch surfaces, and the group that we inherited some of the materials for that multi-touch table from was at UTSIC. It was the Encore Lab that's run by Jim Slotta at UTSIC. And I thought, okay, I'm really interested in multi-touch, and particularly the use of multi-touch surfaces in sort of educational or meaningful contexts. And it turns out that Jim was teaching a course. He ended up being on sabbatical, so I took the course with one of his recent PhD grads and ended up working with his group, mostly building like smart classroom environments. And in a lot of cases, like I built a projector mount for 3 projectors out of an old broken down desk that I found in the trash here at U of T. So there was a lot of that kind of attitude of, you know, repurposing older materials. You know, we have a really great group of people who have had to, you know, as collaborators here over the years, who I think, you know, I've just learned so much from them. And that includes, you know, Matt, who's my supervisor, but it also includes, like, you know, Dan and Mike over here, or like Isaac. For people familiar with the Scientific Instruments Collection, or IHPST, you might be familiar with Isaac Record, who was a postdoc here for 2 years. We actually broke his leg off accidentally and joked about 3D printing him a prosthetic leg. But this was a scan of Isaac that we did. He had a book in his hand, you know, looking very, very scholarly, very much like the philosopher of science that he is. The book snapped off. I've had a lot of good kind of mentors and people who I look to for inspiration over the years. I mean, I can go back to my undergraduate days and think of all the great instructors I had and just colleagues and friends who I learned a tremendous amount from. For me, the best mentorship and inspiration I've ever received has just been from my circle of peers and collaborators. And I just look around and I say, okay, I learned something valuable from you yesterday, you know, or I'm bound to learn something from, you know, any one of these people in the next week or 2 weeks or whenever.